welcome to the second live Q&A with Mike. This is your opportunity to ask Mike anything, generally on faith and life and the Bible and God, but anything else you want to throw in there, you can throw in there. If you just drop it into the chat in our YouTube chat below, we will try and get to any questions that you pose. Jack and Mike, do you want to say hello, and then we'll crack on with our first question?
Hello.
Is that it? I was expecting a speech, Jack.
My name's Jack, and my favourite Christmas chocolate is a Bounty out of the tub.
Yeah, we have just been discussing Christmas sweets and chocolates. That wasn't just a random thing you thought about. That was actually, we've just been discussing that. So it's like a well-oiled machine, this live thing. So what did you say? Bounty?
Yeah, I said Bounty.
In the Quality Street.
That's Heroes.
Oh, Heroes. Yeah. I thought you said Coronation Street for a minute. I thought that's not a chocolate, Jack. Yeah. No, I'm afraid I'm going to stick to wine gums, even though I'm afraid I've just finished my last 4. The jar is empty now. So if anyone wants to buy me anything for Christmas, replenish my wine gum supply, because I've eaten them all.
Mike's Christmas plea.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, right. I will start us off with this question. What's one thing that you wish people knew about the Bible?
Gosh, one thing I wish people knew about the Bible. Well, I think, oh gosh, that is a good question. Because it's not that I can't think of an answer, it's just that which is the right or best answer, because there's so many things you could say to that. I suppose if I can make a slight sidestep of the question and make an observation, I wish everybody would read it, because a lot of people you talk to who maybe have what you might call objections to Christianity, or things that are stumbling blocks to them, they think, I was talking to someone recently who wasn't a Christian, and they said to me, how can somebody, as well, I don't know whether this was a compliment or not, they said, how can someone as intelligent as you believe such a lot of rubbish? So I was that was kind of a pleasant compliment, but then they hit me with believe such a lot of rubbish. And then when I actually probed a little bit more, I realised that they hadn't actually got a clue what was in the Bible. They'd never read it. They'd got a few thoughts and comments and observations about what they thought was in it, which is what you often get, isn't it? So I think if people just read it through, maybe not necessarily Genesis to Revelation in one go, because that obviously isn't the order the Bible, the books were written in anyway. So it doesn't have to be, cover to cover. It can be just, there's lots of Bible reading plans you can get if you want to learn about what's in it. But I think I just wish people would read it. And if people are watching this and they are believers, they're followers of Christ, I would say at least once in your life, it's a good plan to read through the Bible. I can remember I did that some years ago now with the Robert Murray McShane Bible reading plan. I think it's around about 2 chapters a day, and then 3 or 4 chapters at weekends, and you get through it in a year. I mean, it sounds quite a lot, and obviously you don't need to get through it in a year. It's just a plan. And some people now listen to audio. There's a good audio Bible app, David Suchet reading that one. I can't remember what it's called now, but some people are listening to that when they're out running or driving to work or whatever, and that can be a great way of getting through the Bible just when you're double using time. Particularly audio book, it's a little bit more easy, isn't it, to do something else at the same time? So that's probably the best thing I could. I mean, what else would I know? I wish people understood how amazing Jesus is, because I think the Bible really does show him for who he is, and it's amazing, really. So yeah, that would be the best I can do with that one, I think. Good question, though. I like that one.
Well, following on from that, on that Bible theme, have you got a Bible verse or story that you can tell us about that's helped you through difficult times? Is there a specific thing you can think of, or is there something that you always turn to, maybe? Or
Well, I do like the Psalms, so I tend to read the Psalms quite regularly, and if I find those, I think the thing that's helped me in my Christian life the most has been pursuing an understanding of God's nature and his character. So I've always been, as a Christian, I've always been fascinated with God. I am genuinely fascinated with what is he like. Not what is he like, but what is he like? Not in terms of what does he look like, because as we all know, he exists without reference to spatial dimensions or time. So his center is everywhere and his circumference is nowhere. So that's tricky when you're trying to then put some sort of visibility on him, apart from obviously Jesus, who now does look like something. He's a man, same as us, and he's taken our humanity back into heaven. So that's an added dimension of God that wasn't there before Jesus came to earth. But, so I don't mean that. I mean, what is God like in terms of his nature, his character? How does he think? How does he feel? So when you get to meet someone for the first time and you want to know about their personality, their interests, the things that, how do they feel, think, behave, why, what's been, just fascinating. Sometimes people are fascinating, aren't they? So I've always been really fascinated with God, and I just want to get to know him more. So I just think it's just an amazing relationship, just to think, oh, didn't know you felt like that about that, or how do you feel about that? Just to even ask him questions sometimes and wait for him to show me the answers. And so I find the Psalms really helpful just to meditate through, just to read a psalm, and then it might tell me something about God. It might tell me something about how he feels or how he thinks or how he behaves. So I've often gone to Psalms in times of when I think I need to feel near to God in a relationship way. I know we should feel like that all the time, but especially so. So in COVID this year, I've read through the Psalms quite a lot, a psalm a day, as it were, just to kind of, or most days, just to kind of keep me anchored in reality and truth rather than what's going on around me. Otherwise, if we get our eyes off who God is, then we really are in some degree of vulnerability, aren't we? So that would, anything that tells me what God is like, I really like that.
Oh, Jack, have you got a question, or shall I just carry on throwing them out there?
Go on then, I'll jump in for a quick one. Mike, the question is hell a real place, or is it just a figure of speech to portray how bad an eternity without God is?
Crikey. Can we go back to the Quality Street question? Gosh. Well, in the same way as the Bible gives us hints about what the new heavens and the new earth will be like. So this earth isn't going to disappear. It's going to be renewed, remade. And somehow heaven, the heavens dimension, and earth's physical dimension are going to merge. And our bodies will be resurrected and they will be different from how they are now, but recognizable. Jesus was recognizable when he rose from the dead, but his body was a resurrection body, and the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. So there's something about his resurrection body that is true. It's going to be true of ours. So, but then when in Corinthians, when Paul reflects on the questions that people might ask, what sort of a body will we have? What will it be like? Yeah. And he says, how foolish. So rather than answer the question, he says it was foolish to ask the question. Why? Because he said, in the same way as if you look at like a mustard seed or a seed of a plant, say a poppy seed, tiny little poppy seed, little black dot. If you'd never seen a poppy, but you only looked at that seed and you were introduced to that seed for the first time, and someone said, what do you think is going to happen with that seed? You would never in a million years come up with a poppy flower. It's just the two wouldn't have any reference to one another. And so when Paul is talking about imagining what heaven, the new heavens and the new earth are like, and the state of those who know the Lord, what that's going to be like, eternity in glory, without tears. It says, without no tears, all pain and suffering will go. We will be, it's describing the feelings of the place we can't quite imagine. So in the same way, I think references to hell often describe, yes, a place, but they describe the references of how we will feel, how we would feel in that place. So it talks about weeping, wailing, gnashing of teeth, lament of. So it talks about endless loss and endless isolation, endless lament, endless sadness, to describe how we will feel in the place we can't quite imagine physically, because our minds don't have the capability to do that. So I think whenever we talk about heaven and hell, we have to say, well, the same thing applies for heaven or hell in terms of imagining exactly what it's like. We've only got descriptive poetic detail, but we do have definitions of the emotions that we'll feel. So I think with hell, it's enough. There's enough there for us to think, crikey, I don't want to feel like that for eternity. That is just awful. That is a description of hell, regardless of what the physical surroundings and conditions are. They would accentuate the feelings that we have. But I think it's that the Bible puts the emphasis on the feelings, and it uses metaphors like, fire and, all that sort of stuff, to describe something of real pain and eternally lostness, eternal isolation, eternal God-forsakenness, which is difficult for us to imagine, but is nevertheless, it is real. It's not disembodied, and it is, yes, it is a physical man. We would be physically manifested there for those who don't know Christ. It is a physical place. Now, quite what happens, whether there is different theological views as to whether there's whether there is some destruction that takes place eventually of everything, like annihilationism, and some people would teach that. Others would teach that it is a sustained eternal thing. I don't really want to get into that now because it's complex. But I think that's probably the best I can do, is to focus on the emotions, because we can't quite imagine where spiritual and physical merge together in the same way we can't with heaven. But the bottom line is, whoever's watching this, if you're not a believer, you really do not want to go there. So that is why Jesus came. That's the whole point of Jesus coming to earth and dying on a cross, that no human being needs to go to that place, because they're never designed to. We're not designed to die, and we're not designed to go to hell. That is why these are things that are the consequences of man's sinfulness, and Jesus came to rescue us from our own folly that had even brought that destination as a possibility for humankind. So there's nothing that God takes any delight in someone going to. God doesn't send people to hell. We consign ourselves there by our own rebellion from God, as individuals and as humanity, which is why Jesus came. God so loved the world, he sent his son, that whoever believes should not perish. There's another word there, perish. It's describing an activity, isn't it? A perish, but would have eternal life. So I think we've got to understand hell is awful, but it's not something that God consigns people to out of choice. It's an inevitable consequence of our own actions.
Just to follow up on that one slightly, that does seem, eternal lament, as you put it, does seem a bit harsh, and people might be thinking that seems a bit unfair or cruel. How would you kind of reconcile a loving God with someone that does allow people to make foolish decisions where you end up there?
Well, I think love and justice go together, don't they? If we were to watch, I don't know, a news report of someone who had committed a terrible crime against someone and caused untold sadness, misery and devastation to a person's life. But if the news report was saying, oh, this person's got away with it because of a technicality or whatever, or because justice hasn't been followed properly, they would feel a sense in our hearts of outrage, because we think, well, that's not just. It's not just. So justice isn't, justice is not separate from love. Actually, love in its purest form must demand justice for victims. You know, for those who've been wronged. There's something loving about saying, no, love brings about, love in its expression actually expresses love, sometimes expressed as justice. So I think if we say that's a bit harsh, it's a bit like saying, well, God made us and gave us eternal life, gave us relationship with him. He gave us the whole world to rule. Human history was put in our hands. He said, there you go, I want to bless you. I've given you dominion on the earth. I've given you a part of my creation for you to do with it what you like. Look after the planet, make the planet what you want it to be, create human history. I just want to bless you. I mean, just if a father did that to his children and gave them such an incredible inheritance, you think, wow, what an amazing father to be so generous and kind, to bless his children with such fun and such generosity. If that father then said, you know, the only thing I would say is just avoid that tree over there because that's a bit special. Don't tell me what you go there. If you go anywhere else on the planet, just don't go there. What we did was say, well, actually, I want that tree that you said I can't have. I'm not really too interested in the rest of the planet. I want that one. Because why should you tell me what to do? You're only God after all. I can make my own decisions. Thank you very much. You've given me dominion on the earth, so I'm going to take it. Thank you very much. You're not going to stop me from taking that tree. Who are you to tell me not to eat from that tree? Now, the more you then pile it on, and actually look at our utter arrogance for the way we treated God for his generosity, I wouldn't say he's being a bit harsh. I would say he's being a bit lenient, not wiping humanity off the face of the earth, 10 nanoseconds after that had happened. But God so loved the world.
Such an insight into parenting as well.
Yeah, exactly. So next time your children say, isn't that a bit harsh, Mum? You say, no, this is harsh. I'm going to eat all the curly whirlies on the advent calendar. That's harsh. So I think we always make ourselves the victims. But what if we've hurt God? What if we've offended God? What if we've grieved him? What if we've committed crime against him? What if he is the innocent party and we have violated him in some way, which is the case? Then I don't think he's being harsh. I think he's being merciful, because we deserve nothing other than judgment, because we've treated him so badly. Would be my thoughts on that.
Right. I'm going to try and give you a nicer question.
Oh yeah, good. Jack, I know what Jack's question. He's too high. He's the Grinch. He's the Grinch of questions tonight.
We'll go fully random.
Yeah.
And this is one for you. And it's, if you weren't working for the church, what job would you be doing?
Ooh. Well, Gosh. Well, the job I did have before I went full-time to the church, I really enjoyed. I used to work for the civil service in what was then called supplementary benefit, and it became income support. I suppose it would be universal credit now. It would be that sort of, it was on that line of thing. So I did enjoy that, because it gave me a chance to meet so many people. It was a real education in people. And also in those days, you really did feel that you could make some difference to someone by just helping them financially sort out what they could get and what they were entitled to. Back in the day, there was a lot more sort of complexity to benefits and what have you. So I did enjoy that. But at school, here's a question. At school, I was fascinated by weather. So I would have liked to have been a weatherman and gone to, why is that funny? And gone to the Met Office to study clouds and stuff. I really enjoy weather, still do, fascinated by weather. So I like that sort of thing. Do you think I'd have made a good weather presenter? No, all right. I obviously made a right career choice then.
Can we try that on a Sunday morning? We could have weather with Mike.
Yeah, I can. If you gave me a backdrop, then I could say I could do that movement. Oh, I'm facing the wrong direction. I could do that movement. That's the thing, because there isn't anything behind them, is there? They have to do that to a blank, just a green screen. So I'd have to point to Scotland and Wales. Yeah, that sort of thing. So I think it's complicated, isn't it? Yeah. So I think weatherman I enjoyed. Doesn't sound very interesting though, does it? Really?
I don't know.
Do you know?
Sounds quite fun.
Yeah. Okay.
You could do Strictly then as well.
Oh no, that wouldn't be fun for any human being. Going back to that question about hell, that would be a related question. For the viewers.
I used to know someone who we used to say quite a lot that there was going to be lots of noise and singing and dancing in heaven. And to them, that was the worst thing that they could think was going to be happening, because they were quite calm and quiet and peaceful. So we're all quite different. So is it going to be one big party? And then what will the quiet introverts be doing at this big party?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a good question, because I think what happens is there's obviously we have some there's a few things that have conspired to give that view. One is, I suppose, there's a sort of Greek style thought, sort of ancient Greek thought, which very much looked at the physical body as being an encumbrance and actually sinful. So clearly heaven was going to be a disembodied state of, spiritual ecstasy rather than anything bodily good, because the body was seen as, something you had to live with, but it was good to get rid of it eventually. It's a bit of a sinful thing. Whereas Hebrew thought, which is biblical thought, sees the body and the non-material part of us as one thing. So sometimes there's teaching that's what's either called monistic or bipartite or tripartite, saying is mankind one part, two parts, or three parts? So is he a whole entity? Is he body and spirit? Is he body, mind and spirit? Body, soul and spirit? And I think the nearest biblical way of viewing it is that man is an entity. You can't separate out the spiritual dynamics from the physical dynamics. So that's I think important to say. Then you've also got Renaissance art and all sorts of stuff like that, which tended to celebrate the angelic, the mystical, all that sort of. So there's been lots of cultural things that have tended to make us think that when we die we go to heaven, and it's a disembodied state doing very angelic things like singing and, you know, all that sort of stuff. And then also we read the beginning of Revelation, or not the beginning, but into Revelation, the scene is of a huge multitude singing, you know, glory to the Lamb, etc., etc. And so we take that sort of camera photo. It's a bit like taking, I don't know, a picture of Ness Point and saying that's what the UK looks like. Yeah, it's a glorious thing at sunrise, most easterly point, glorious. But there's more to the UK than that one shot. And heaven, and when heaven is heaven and earth are remade and merged and what have you, we are not going to be singing an eternal worship service. That would not be much. That would not be my idea of you know, an eternity doing that one activity. That would not. That's like a record that's got stuck. And I think that's a very narrow way of viewing what God has made us for. We're made for exploration. We're made for creativity. We're made for making things and doing things and going places and writing things and music and art and poetry and relationships and travel and education and science and all of that. Why should that stop in eternity? Why should it not be more a reclaiming of what God originally made when he made man and he made the earth good? Except this time he's going to remake it. But I don't think that we would lose the dynamics that God intended us to have. So I think there'll be travel, exploration, all sorts of stuff going on that you have eternity to enjoy. I mean, to me, that sounds like heaven.
That does sound like heaven.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's because it is. Well, you know, but I mean, yes, of course there will be worship, but even Revelation is a pictorial thing. Worship isn't just about singing songs, is it? Worship is about a relationship with God, and that's the thing that's being conveyed there.
Yeah.
Imagine traveling the universe with the presence of God with you, and just, I mean, I don't think we can't imagine these things, can we? Because they're just too. They sound good though. So yeah, imagine going to places you've never had a chance to go to while you're alive here. You can stack them all up. You don't have to have a bucket list. You can do it all afterwards. Because it'd be even better.
And free.
And free. Yeah. No Ryanair. No EasyJet. You could probably fly yourself, couldn't you? Because we will have some sort of mobility as Jesus went up. He ascended physically. So there must be some sort of travelling mechanism we have that doesn't require us to walk everywhere. There's one to think about.
Like the sound of that.
Yeah. Beat the traffic queues. No more queuing at the bridge in Lowestoft in the inside lane being cut in by people. Just lift up and go.
Yeah, no more queues.
No more queues.
Did you want me to come back with a slightly easier question for you, Mike?
I don't mind.
One of the questions I got asked today at work was, can Christians marry a non-Christian? Obviously, I gave an answer, but I'll see what you've got to say on the subject.
Well, there's nothing. Obviously, the answer is yes. People can marry who they want in that sense. But I think the issue is it wise? And I think the Bible would say the answer is no, that is not wise. Because in Amos, the book of Amos 3, chapter 3, it gives this observation on life in general. And it says, can two walk together unless they agree? And it's a rhetorical question, obviously, because the answer is, well, of course not. People don't agree with each other. They're not going to walk together in unity, are they? Because they don't agree. Can two people walk together if they don't agree? No. So that's why you have, in the House of Commons, you have the government on one side and the opposition on the other side, because they're not sitting together. Why? Because they don't agree. Otherwise, it'd be very squashed over one side. We'll all cozy up with you. No, they don't cozy up because they don't agree. So two can't walk together unless they agree. They're on opposite sides. So for a Christian to marry a non-Christian, they're not in agreement. They're not in agreement on the fundamental goal of life, the purpose of life, what they want out of life, who's governing their life. See, a Christian, genuinely a Christian, would say this: I am not in charge of my life, Christ is. So if you marry me, you're marrying someone who is not going to be free to make their own choices. I'm only going to be able to make choices that Christ approves of and Christ asks me to do. If you look at it like that, it's fraught with difficulties, because you're just not going to be going in the same direction. Because the person who isn't a Christian, quite rightly for them, would say, well, I'm not following what Christ says, I don't even believe in him. And you'd respect that, because, well, you know, not going to get someone to follow someone they don't believe in or don't agree with. You know, you'd respect that. So it's not a case of, and I've heard sometimes people say, yeah, well, I'm sure eventually, you know, I'll be able to influence them, and, you know, no, you won't. It mostly goes the other way, so that the Christian ends up having to compromise, because the lordship of Christ is absolute, it's total. And I think even Christians that are married to Christians find that difficult. I think we all find that difficult. Jesus is in charge of everything. That doesn't leave much room for negotiation, does it really? It's sort of like, where do you go with that? It's either just start taking up your cross and following him, isn't it? Well, how can you ask someone to marry you if they're not living that same sort of thing? No, in the mercy of God, I would have to say, pastorally, I have observed where God's kindness and mercy have overruled in such situations, and people have got married unwisely, and then their partner has come to faith. But I could also give you many other instances, far more instances, where that hasn't happened. So we're supposed to live wise lives, aren't we? And make wise choices as best as we can, following biblical principles. And so I think the Lord would give us a number of indications in the scriptures that marrying someone who doesn't share your faith in Christ is going to be not leading you into a position of happiness and fulfillment and joy. It would just cause constant clash of values, expectations, things that you want out of life, all those sorts of things. Which does lead me on to another attendant point, is that there are so many wonderfully godly single men and women who are looking for godly partners. Now, live on air, sort it out. Come on. We can sort this out. There's enough to go round if they can be found. There really is. We've got to, men, come on, make a move, do stuff. There is a real need for Christians to really think and take action on these matters, because many single people are really longing to meet someone. And I think one of the benefits of belonging to a family of churches is that there's a lot more people in the mix. And there's some good Christian dating sites. There are some good ones now. And I'm hearing numbers of good stories recently of people finding who they've looked for. Really some lovely, good, joyful, happy ending stories. So I think why settle for what is not going to be happy for either party, and instead, really go the extra mile and look for someone who shares what you hold and prize most dearly in life.
To follow up to that last point, Mike, where are all these single Christians? Just asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Well, this is
Drop your name in the chat below.
Yeah, put your name in the chat box. The chat up box is there for a reason. I think this is a really interesting sort of subject we've now got on here. I think there's a role for church leaders to play a part in trying to make some of this happen. Good, gently arranged marriages are not a bad thing. Not that you're forcing people to marry, but you're just introducing a few options. And sometimes it takes a little bit of help, a little bit of navigation. I have to confess, at the Mobilize student event some years ago, I sort of put a very, it was heavily influenced by my voice that they should do speed dating one of the evenings. And they did, and some people actually got relationships and married out of that. And I always think anytime there is an opportunity where we can be creative through, inter-church relations, good Christian dating sites, which there are, as I say, there are some really good ones now. What's the one that someone told me about recently? Is it Salt? Something like that? Salt, maybe Salt. Someone in the box will know who's on it. They can write that. They can tell them. I think it's called Salt. And that's just been quite a good one. I mean, HTB used to do a speed dating night where they had a meal and you'd go and sit at the table, then you'd move around after 5 minutes and talk to someone else. So I just think we've got to be a little bit creative, and it is part of Christian discipleship to try and help people find someone. I think that, I don't think it should be something we don't talk about. I think it's something that we should, engage with. Leaders need to engage with that. Many of the Christians I know in nations like India, they really do arrange marriages, and sometimes they, that it's not that people have to get married, but there's a culture of expecting that your leaders and your families are going to get involved in that. So perhaps we're a little too passive as a church family and church families. Controversy on live Q&A.
Yeah, because Paul, I feel like, Paul was single and very much promoted that it was easier to follow Christ if you were single.
Well, it is practically, yeah, because the thing he said was, if you're married, he was talking to men particularly, he said, if you're a married man, you've got divided concerns, because you're going to be thinking about your wife and how to keep her happy and how to make sure you've done all the chores that are on the list and all the things that, come with responsibility of being married, making, it says husbands should lay down their lives for their wives, just as Christ laid down his life for the church. There's a big responsibility if you're married as a man, that you try to make your wife and your family flourish as much as they can. That's your responsibility, to create an environment where they flourish and become all that God wants them to be, all their gifts and all their abilities and all their desires, just to help them flourish, which is what Christ does for us. We're supposed to mimic him. So if you're doing that, and then you've got, a sort of a call on your life to serve God in some way, it's complicated, so Paul is saying, look, if you can manage and just stay single, in other words, you don't need to have sex particularly, you're not very bothered about it, that's the main point he's making in that chapter. I'm just giving the abbreviated version. If he said, if you don't mind whether you never have sex in your life or not, and you can just get on with life and manage, don't get married, what's the point? But he said, if you're really feeling, now I really need a partner with life, because partly I feel, the desire for attachment and affection, and I don't think I can manage on my own. I get too lonely, and there is a kind of a sexual side to my life which I feel just needs, proper expression. He said, if that's what you want to do that. But if you don't feel that's a real, thing in your life where you feel, I'm distracted until I've found someone who I feel I can share my life with, and I'm distracted because I really do want to be able to have a fulfilling sexual relationship, then if you don't need to do those things, then give your life to serving Christ fully, and you won't have other distractions. Well, I think that's the essence of what he's trying to say in that passage. And he's saying, whether you marry, whether you don't marry, you're not doing wrong either way. So I don't think he's saying it's better to be single. I think he's just saying you've got to decide inside what you feel personally, and then whichever you do is fine.
Okay, I've got another question it can follow on from that, but it could be to do with anything. What do you do if you've trusted God with something and you feel like he's let you down?
Well, I think it's better to ask the question, what do you do when you've trusted God with something? And, because I cannot say that I've ever met anybody who's a Christian who hasn't been through some sort of mysterious set of circumstances that you think, well, what was all that about? I really believed you, Lord, for this, and then it didn't happen, or something went wrong, or you step out in obedience and it goes wrong, or there's so many things in life that will leave us inevitably with questions. I wouldn't want to try and simplify all that complexity with a trite answer, because it's a bit like when Job went through all he went through. It's a great big book of the Bible, Job, where he trusted God with everything, and he was a righteous man. He'd done nothing wrong, and yet all sorts of calamity came upon him, and there was no answer. I mean, we can read the end of the book and find out, how it ended, but he was living it, and so he's going through all sorts of things, and his friends are not a lot of help, because they're all saying, well, he must have sinned, there's something wrong with you. It's not, no, thanks, cheers, thanks a bunch. Great to have friends like that. Just giving simplistic answers to complicated questions, which I find really annoying in the Christian life, when people try to be simplistic about things that are very complicated. Be quiet. It's just, sometimes you just need to listen and not come up with answers. I know this is called Q&A, but if someone pours out to me a episode of their life that is bathed in mystery, I would be a fool to try and put some sort of simplistic, trite answer on someone's very, very complicated, painful journey. I wouldn't want to insult them with an answer. And in the end, Job says, I will put my hand on my mouth. Even if he slay me, I will love him. In the end, Job got to the point where he said, I don't need an answer, because I've surrendered my sense of injustice. I've surrendered my right to have an answer. I've surrendered my sense of, you owe me some explanation. And so I'll put my hand over my mouth and I'll say, even if he kills me, I'll love him. And I don't think God does things to us that are unkind and cruel, because he's kind and he's loving and he's good. So let's mess with God's character. I'd rather live in the mystery of saying, stuff happens. It's a fallen world. It's a broken world. Even Jesus died with a why on his lips when he said, why have you forsaken me? So we've got to bear that in mind. If Jesus had his moment on the cross, where he said, why have you forsaken me? And he's quoting a psalm, but he's expressing something. He's expressing a sense of, oh, Lord, I didn't know it would feel like this. So if Jesus goes through that, we're his followers, how can we expect not to go through those moments? But I think what God is looking for is not so much that we get the answer. I think what he's looking for is an unconditional surrender. So, because a surrendered life tends to be an obedient life, and a surrendered life tends to lead to a sacrificial life, and a life that's more like Christ than it is like us. And the more we learn how to surrender in the midst of pain and mystery and difficulty and heartbreak, somehow something in God, when we are weak, we become strong. When we surrender our right to know, God can use us. Don't ask me to explain it. I don't know. But all I know is you have to nail it to the cross. And somehow when you do nail it to the cross, it gives you a power and a freedom that can only come through surrender and devotion. And, some people talk about brokenness. I don't like that word. I don't think God breaks us. I don't think he's looking for brokenness. I think he's looking for surrender. That's different. Brokenness sounds like you've been smashed and destroyed. God doesn't destroy us. but he does want us to surrender, so that we might become more the people he's made us to be.
So it kind of goes a bit with the whole, we touched a bit on it on predestination last time, but why that God asks us to pray, and we're told to pray about, well, everything. So you can be praying for something and into certain situations which God sees everything and knows what's coming. So you're praying for things that aren't going to happen or are going to get taken away from you or hurt.
Well, the other way of looking at it is this: what if our prayers could persuade God to change his course of action?
Can they?
I would say yes. There's a famous quote, I can't remember who by, where it says, when we pray, things happen that would not have happened had we not prayed. Now, if that isn't true, then there's no point in prayer at all. Because if prayer doesn't affect outcomes, then why are we praying? Now, as a case in point, the world will never know this, and most people who listen to this who are not Christian will think I'm utterly crazy saying what I'm about to say, but that doesn't matter. We prayed in our thousands in the Enough prayer evenings through the summer, once a month, that a COVID vaccine would be found. And we even prayed that things would be discovered that were almost by accident. I am convinced God answered those prayers of the thousands of people, not just us, but there were thousands of us, but there were many thousands across the world. But even our thousands, maybe even just one prayer of one person might well have shifted things in the heavenlies. And God had mercy. And scientists did discover things by accident. The fact that the two injections works better than one was an accidental discovery. And even when they said that on the news, Sue and I were listening to that, or Sue told me about it, and I thought back, wow, we prayed that something almost accidental would be discovered. So I think when God sets his will in a certain way, he actually invites us to contest him, because somehow he wants us to want what we're asking for enough. So, God said he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and Moses argued with him. He said, well, no. What if there's 50 righteous people? And God says, oh, all right, then if there's 50, I won't. What if there's 10? Well, all right, no, what if there's 10? What if there's 5? So he's arguing with him, and I think God likes it. Prayer must have argument in it. Because when I pray, and not all my prayer times are good. Sometimes I end up thinking, what on earth is all that about? I've stared out the window for 15 minutes, can't concentrate. But when I do hit it right, I will often get hold of a promise in the Bible or something that I know God has said. And I will say, Lord, it says here, you will do this. If you don't mean it, don't say it. I think God likes that kind of prayer. I think he wants me to get so confident that he is not someone who changes his mind or says things he doesn't mean. He wants to bring out of me a confidence that whatever the situation, if God has said something, he will do it, or we can leverage his promises. Now, it doesn't mean we have to treat the Bible in context and not take things out of context and then say that God said it and actually, well, no, he didn't say that. You're making it mean something it didn't mean. So you've got to treat the Bible correctly. But there are things we can go to God on and say, well, look, you said. And I think he wants us to argue our case in prayer. Prayer meetings should be very passionate affairs, almost like in a courtroom where you're presenting your case and say, I put it to you that, it's that kind of, if prayer is all weak, feeble, flabby, well, Lord, God, perhaps, wouldn't it be lovely if maybe, well, just let your will be done? Where is that in the Bible? I can't find any prayers like that. They're not in there. They're not in there. Read the Psalms when David prays. He says, it's all gone wrong. It's rubbish. Where are you, God? You've abandoned me. He really lets him have it. And he says, but I know you said you're kind and good and gracious. So come on, Lord, do what you said you would. That's how to pray, to leverage God's character into your situation. And I don't think we've learned that in the West yet. I think people in the global South and global East, believers there, they know how to pray because they often pray in more desperate situations than we've learned to pray in. Although with COVID and Brexit and all sorts of other things going on, I think things are becoming slightly more desperate here than we've perhaps known for some time. And that might not be, in the bigger providence of God, a bad thing to wake the church up to the fact that we actually need to get serious with God and pray and pray and pray, and not treat prayer meetings or individual prayer as a kind of an afterthought or an emergency seatbelt in case of, it's something that can change the course of events. Anyway, starting to preach now rather than answer the question.
Well, following on from what you mentioned in there about COVID and the vaccine, we've had a question in the chat, and I think I'm asking this correctly. Do you think there's any reason why we as Christians should not have the vaccine to let other people who might need it more because we've got God? Or is there, like, we've been praying for this vaccine, is there any reason as a Christian you would refuse the vaccine?
Well, personally, no. I'll be first in the queue if they'd allow me to be. I mean, crikey, I can't come quick enough. Why would you not? I don't understand it. I mean, okay, there are some people who legitimately might have an opinion, I'm not sure it's safe. Well, that's your personal choice. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, yes, there's risk, but there's risk in waking up in the morning. I mean, what? And as far as I'm concerned, we are here to serve the purposes of God. That's why we're here. So anything that facilitates us being able to serve the purposes of God and do the things that he's called us to do, I will happily access. So I think the government are doing the right thing by starting with the most vulnerable and those who need the vaccine. That's just. I would also say, if I can make, this isn't a political point about the present government, I'm just saying any government, I would say this, we should also invest as much in giving the vaccine or subsidizing the vaccine to poorer countries. So if there's ever a time where I would say, I will wait my turn and those overseas in vulnerable situations who need it first can go ahead of me, I would do that. Yes, for sure. Because if I think, well, we've got the vaccine, we can afford it, who cares about what's happening elsewhere in the world? I don't think that is... I don't think that reflects the kind of global concern that we should have as Christians. But on the bigger question of the vaccine, I think it's amazing. And it will enable us to get back out there, reaching nations, touching, communities with the gospel, which is why we're here. So I would be happily first in the queue. Of course, there's risks. There's risks with everything. I mean, I don't know what the risks are, but I have to trust the scientists that they say they wouldn't be injecting everybody with it if they thought there was, serious concerns. And I'd be prepared to do that.
Just to put another point of view into that one, when the Titanic was sinking, the preacher John Harper, he said to a guy, he asked the man, was he saved? And he said no. So he said, here, take my life jacket. You need this more than me. Is that a sacrificial thing that maybe we could be doing with vaccines? All right, I know Jesus, take my vaccine instead of me. Well,
there isn't only one vaccine, is there? I mean, there's enough for everybody. So I don't think it applies. If we were at a stage where, look, vaccine supplies are going to run out and we need volunteers who are going to say, we'll go without, then I think the case has a point. But there isn't. I mean, I think we've ordered so many millions of these things. There's about, what is it, 65 million in the UK people, whatever, something like that, 70 million. We've ordered 100 million of just one vaccine, and then there's another several million of all the other ones. So I don't think we're going to be. I don't think we're going to be in a Titanic lifebelt situation. It might take a while to roll out. It might be months. It might be next summer before I'm offered one. If the logistics are really difficult, but I would be first in the queue to have one when it's my turn. So I don't really understand the Christian, if there is a Christian argument not to have the vaccine. I know there's all sorts of strange conspiracy theories going on at the moment, which is QAnon stuff and all sorts of stuff, and it all gets mixed up with that. That's a load of rubbish. So I won't even go there.
I'll finish you on a really nice little question, which is, what do you love most about our church, so LCC? What do you love about LCC?
Oh, I think over the years, obviously, because I've been in it since the start, because we were part of the start, I think there are some beautiful moments of enjoying the richness of relationship with people. And I think we have, well, everybody's wonderful, aren't they? You know, but there are particular moments and particular people and particular situations, particular things that happened, or particular memories you've got, that you think, wow, I am a richer person for knowing that person, or for seeing how they navigated this bit of life, or how they encouraged me at a certain time, or how I was able to just journey with them through something and it built something deep together. I think the richness of human relationships at God's church, when it's functioning the way it should, it's a magnificent thing on planet Earth. It really is the glory of the Lord. It's extraordinary when the church really just hits the sweet spot of what it's designed to be. And it is the people. It is the people. And obviously my calling, whatever, has taken me largely beyond the borders of LCC over the last 10 years or so, more and more. So, you know, I've had less time in my home base than would have been the case before, although that's always been a gradual exponential thing. And you miss, you do miss your home-based relationships, as the contact surface area that you did have. But you then get deeply enriched by people you're meeting all over the different parts of the world where we've got, a part to play, the field that God has assigned to us. And you're again deeply enriched by those people. So it's got to be the people. We were, Sue's been transferring a lot of videos onto DVD, just so that the videos didn't, once they deteriorate, you've lost the footage, haven't you? And there's one particular one which she did, which is an interview with Walter and Doris Long, who many people won't even know who that is, but Walter and Doris were founding members of the church, and back into the Bethel days. They were a huge influence, spiritual mother and father to us and to the church, really. And just to listen to that interview that they did, which we'd hope one day we can upload it perhaps to YouTube so everyone can watch it at some point. You just listen to think these were amazing people, just utterly amazing people. And you think, what a privilege to have known such people. So that sort of thing. And then I think, going on mission together, building something together with brothers and sisters. I think the early days of, when we formed the church, as a leadership team came together and you went through some stuff together, you really forged deep connection. And there's something about doing something together, something about building something together that really brings connection for the rest of your life, really, brings something really powerful. And I think, if I may say, for your generation, both of you lovely people, your generation, you need the same sort of experiences in that sense of finding brothers and sisters to really go on mission together with, be it in Lowestoft, expanding however we do in the future as COVID begins to loosen its grip. I think there will be tremendous opportunities for the church to really go on mission in our own town, but also to go on mission in different places with a team of brothers and sisters who you really do life together with. That's a precious thing. You can't, those things stay with you for the rest of your life. I mean, yesterday I've been in an apostolic team meeting for relational mission, and there's people who I've been pioneering together with for 25, 30 years, and you think, wow, those are precious relationships, and so that would be, there's people like LCC that I feel the same about. So prize the body of Christ, prize the church. And although we can't meet together easily at the moment, we should maximize every opportunity. Text people, Zoom people, do running partners, join a community group, do the online meeting, go to the prayer meetings, do spontaneous things just to bless one another. The family of God is a most precious thing, and often we don't realize what we've got until it's gone. And I think COVID has shaken everybody, and some people are dropping off the edges a little bit because I don't know, I don't know why, just stuff happens, doesn't it? And we all get a little bit pulled in all sorts of directions. I think we've all been traumatized a little bit, to be honest. We all get a little bit lost. Let's not get lost. Let's go after our own lost sheep and make sure everybody, as best as we can, we just watch out for each other. And prize the family of God, because it's more important even than your own family. It really is. God's family is the real deal, and the church is a glorious thing, and we should have a very high view of the church, that it's a very precious thing. So that it's a random selection of thoughts.
Jack, have we got a couple more minutes, or can we ask Mike about what he's doing next?
I think we could ask Mike what he's got planned next.
Well,
give us a bit of an overview of maybe what you got planned for 2021.
Oh, I thought you meant what we're going to do next. Literally, I was having a cup of tea. But January, well, what I have been doing over the last number of years is I try to take January as a sort of a month where I do things a bit different. So I sort of try to focus on some study or meeting people I've never met before who I think could help me sharpen my skills. I want to keep on learning. I do believe in lifelong learning, so I'm trying to just always improve and learn and get some input. I often spend more time praying, thinking, planning the year ahead. So I try to have a bit of a concentrated month in January every year, which has been, important actually, and I'm glad I've done it, because I there's always stuff to do, and if you don't actually try and sort of be proactive in some things rather than just reactive to what's happening, then it can get a little overwhelmed. But this year, I'm hoping to carry on writing. I've made a start on writing the next book, which is the Everyone a Witness book. So I've got my chapter titles. I've got the first chapter in draft. So I've got to write about another 6 or 7 chapters. I'm not a natural writer. I need a lot of help. So, and I try to write coffee table books that just are easy reading, but take big themes and perhaps make them just very, very, hopefully very accessible to anybody. So that's what I'm going to try and do. But also because relational mission is going through quite a lot of, there's a lot of change because of growth, and things are developing, which is a wonderful thing. I do have 1 or 2 key sort of meetings and things that I've got to do in January that I wouldn't normally be doing, but I will be doing them a little bit as well, because there's some things that are a bit time dependent. So it's a little bit of a strange January compared to usual, but that's kind of what I try to do. So you could pray for me, anyone who's listening, pray that I write this book and it's of some help, because I'll need all the help I can get with that. This will prove whether prayer works. If you can get me to write a good book, I tell you, prayer works. Day of miracles.
How long does it take to write a book?
Well, for me, crikey, ages. I mean, dear, I go through various drafts and redrafts and what have you. I don't like the process.
Which one's been your favourite to write?
Well, I haven't done that many. I've done 3, and I think my favourite was The Prayers of Many, because I felt I had a really good framework for that. So I felt that that was good, and that's really, it's being translated into maybe 6 or more languages. So it's going around the nations a bit, which is nice. You know, I don't know how many we've sold, but it's certainly been translated into numbers of different languages. Mandarin, I think, is one of them. Swahili, Hindi, Spanish, French, German, Dutch. Yeah, so it's good. Thank you to our viewers. How many viewers have we got, Jack? 3? Is it just us 3?
We've sort of averaged between 18 to 22 at times.
Tremendous.
No one's dropped off suddenly because they don't know what you're saying. So
good. Well, that's always good. And people can always watch it later on YouTube, can't they?
They can indeed.
Although they can't then interact.
We might have to take out your comments about Ryanair before we publish it too much, though.
I was merely saying that Ryanair won't be necessary in heaven. Ryan scare.
I think you've covered yourself there, Mike.
I think
probably all good.
I think they get away with that.
Well, time to say goodbye then.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you to the production team.
Thanks,
Jack.
Thanks for everyone. Thank you to everyone for their questions. But we will be doing another one of these in the new year, so you can get any more questions if we've touched on something that you want to ask. Get your questions in. We'll be back.